founding ideals as sacred, the ideas of the Enlightenment, were actually considered sacred by the founders, and are still by a few. I do. Our bodies as sacred, ourselves, and that these disconnections have led us to these insane policies, some of which I've described, and to the crisis. For example, Klebsiella planticola. Klebsiella planticola is a bacteria, or bacterium, I guess, that lives on the roots of virtually every plant on Earth. And what it does with the roots, it forms a slime layer around the roots, and it protects them, and it also breaks down minerals, or it ingests certain minerals, and turns them into organic forms, combines them with carbon, combines them with other elements, or oxidize or whatever, depending on the mineral, so that they can be absorbed through the roots of the tree or the plant. And during the Dan Quayle vice presidency in the George Herbert Walker Bush presidency, Dan Quayle was in charge of this competitiveness council, which was basically deregulate everything. And they did away with any idea of regulations for releasing genetically modified organisms into the atmosphere here in the United States. And there's this big problem with plant waste. After they harvest corn or wheat, there's all these husks left over, and a lot of farmers would just burn them. And out in Hawaii, if you've ever been out there during sugarcane season, they burn the sugarcane after they've cut it. And down in Louisiana and in the South, they do it. And you know, it's pretty wasteful actually, and it's throwing a lot of carbon back into the atmosphere. And economically, it's a mess. And so these scientists in Europe came up with this brilliant idea: why don't we take the gene from brewer's yeast that causes it to convert sugars into alcohol, and combine it with a gene from bacteria that can live on or with cellulose, so it will ultimately convert cellulose into alcohol, and inject this gene into a widespread, easily used, easy to get bacteria. And so they did this with Klebsiella planticola up in Oregon. And they, because it was not against the law to do it here. In Europe, they have the precautionary principle. You have to prove something's safe before you release it into the environment. Here, it's like you have to prove that it's dangerous to get it banned. It's the exact opposite. So this professor up in Oregon, and I'm sorry, it's been a long, long time. I'm forgetting her last name. Her first name is Elaine. I want to say Elaine Pagels, but that's somebody else. But in any case, she, and my apologies to her if she's listening to this tape, she had a PhD student whose name was Michael, and I can't remember his last name either. And I need to read my own book again. It's been a few years since I wrote that, or a year since I wrote that chapter. In any case, he decided for his PhD thesis that he was going to look at this bacterium. And so they got a bunch of little wheat plants and sterile soil, and they had 3 categories: one that got, this normal Klebsiella on the roots, and one that got the genetically modified Klebsiella on the roots, and one that maybe didn't have any, or whatever the third one was. And actually, I guess it was just those 2. And they watered them and said, let's see how they grow. What happens? What happens if this organism gets loose in the wild? And this was just a month or 2 before this company was going to do this and solve the world's problems, right? With all this sludge, they were by releasing the Klebsiella, they were going to, be able to have giant vats where all this organic waste, from grass clippings to everything else, goes in, and what comes out is alcohol. And we can run our cars on, and we can all make money and be happy. And isn't that great? And a few days went by, and if I can grab it for me, there's actually a phrase in there that's just incredible. If I can find